After an endless series of delays and reshoots, Aquaman will get his second solo film just in time for Christmas. Before you dive in, here's what you need to know before its premiere. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is slated for release on December 22, 2023. Fans who have been following the DC Extended Universe will know that Lost Kingdom suffered some drastic delays due to the shakeup that occurred following the Warner Bros. Discovery merger. The movie was initially scheduled to be released on December 16, 2022, before being moved back to March 17, 2023. The film was moved yet again to December 25, 2023, and then to December 20th. Finally, Warner Bros. Decided to move the film one more time to December 22nd, which is where it'll hopefully stay put. December will be a big month for the studio, as they're releasing Wonka, Aquaman, and The Color Purple back to back to back. Will their three-pronged play bring in the box office dollars? The movies likely won't be competing for the same audiences, so if fans are in the mood for superhero action during the holidays, The Lost Kingdom might fare well against its December competition. As fans might recall, the first Aquaman saw our hero defeat his half-brother Orm and take over as King of Atlantis. According to the official synopsis, Aquaman's new reign comes under attack after his old enemy Black Manta arrives in Atlantis seeking revenge. This time, though, the villain has the power of the Black Trident, which unleashes a devastating and evil power. Following the return of Black Manta, Aquaman is forced to team up with his imprisoned brother as the two try desperately to save their family's kingdom and the world from the destructive power of the Black Trident. With these two brothers bickering, it's sure to be a blast as they battle all sorts of aquatic enemies to protect their homeworld.
Good job, brother. High five. Do not call me brother.
Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom stars Jason Momoa as the Atlantean King, who also goes by the name of Arthur Curry. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II and Patrick Wilson reprise their roles from the first film as well, with Tamora Morrison and Nicole Kidman also returning to play Tom Curry and Atlanna. Also returning to the cast is Amber Heard, who reprises her role as the Atlantean warrior Mera. Heard's involvement with the film continues to be a source of heavy controversy among online fans, with many still petitioning for her removal from Aquaman after she lost a civil defamation verdict against Johnny Depp in 2022. Heard is joined by action star Dolph Lundgren, who is set to appear in the film as Mera's father, King Nereus. When the original Aquaman swam into theaters back in 2018, the undersea adventure earned a staggering $1.14 billion, which made it the fifth highest grossing movie of the year. Needless to say, Warner Bros. Didn't want to screw around with success, so they brought on the same filmmaker who sailed the original movie to box office glory, James Wan. In addition to helming both Aquaman movies, Wan is no stranger to action fare as he directed both Furious 7 and Death Sentence. Of course, most moviegoers probably associate Wan with the horror genre, as he also directed Saw, The Conjuring, and Insidious, among other creepy films. And evidently, he had his fair share of horror working on The Lost Kingdom, as Wan had to undergo 3 separate reshoots, which The Hollywood Reporter described as almost an unprecedented number. Warner Bros. And DC have famously undergone some regime changes over the last few years, and evidently, new bosses demanded new angles on the material. Despite all the behind-the-scenes drama, Wan got it done, and even though multiple people have given him notes, the filmmaker insists The Lost Kingdom is still his creation, telling Entertainment Weekly, "At the end of the day, this is my movie." In addition to bringing back Jason Momoa and James Wan for the sequel, the film also features the return of screenwriter David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, a longtime collaborator of Wan's and the writer behind the original Aquaman film.
Are you invoking the combat of the kings?
Call it whatever you want. I call it an ass whooping.
Aside from Lost Kingdom, Johnson McGoldrick has also written screenplays for films like Wrath of the Titans and The Conjuring 2, and television shows like The Walking Dead. Early reports indicated that at least some of the story for Lost Kingdom was based on a pitch that Momoa himself created after the filming of the first Aquaman. However, as of right now, it's unclear how much of that pitch made it into Johnson McGoldrick's final script. While there have been a few exceptions here and there, such as the R-rated Zack Snyder's Justice League, most DCEU movies come ready to rock with a PG-13 rating. After all, it's the sweet spot for blockbuster success. It's just edgy enough so you know there's some violence and mild cursing, but it's tame enough so kids and teens can watch. All the highest-grossing movies are PG-13, and that's also true for DC titles such as Wonder Woman, Man of Steel, and the original Aquaman. So it should come as no surprise that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will be rated PG-13. The aquatic adventure earned that rating due to sci-fi violence and some language. Expect the same sort of content you saw in the first Aquaman film, and chances are good that you won't be shocked by anything you see on the screen. After the film's title announcement earlier that month, production for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom began in late June 2021. While the first film was shot in Australia, Italy, and Morocco, The Lost Kingdom began production in the United Kingdom, where most of the film was shot. With so much of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom taking place underwater, it makes sense that the picture would be shot at Warner Brothers Studios in London, something that fans taking the studio tour confirmed back in July 2022. Though principal photography had wrapped 6 months earlier, additional reshoots with Ben Affleck's Batman took place in the summer of 2022. Beyond Europe, The Lost Kingdom spent some time in the United States. Throughout the back half of 2021, Los Angeles and Hawaiian units shot additional material, with lead stars Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson seen on set in Malibu on the very last day of principal photography. Most comic book and superhero movies are generally inspired by the source material, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom draws from those same sources. At the end of the trailer for the movie, Warner Brothers and DC Comics promoted a few graphic novels that showcase the recent history of our favorite Atlantean king. The Trench and War for the Throne are both stories written by DC scribe Jeff Johns when he reinvented Aquaman for a modern audience. The third book, The Drowning, was helmed by Dan Abnett and set during the DC Rebirth era, which sought to combine the traditional DC status quo with modern stories in a blended universe. The Drowning is also notable due to Arthur's attempts to make peace between his undersea people and the surface world. Of course, these aren't the only Aquaman stories that likely inspired The Lost Kingdom, but given that they're being officially promoted by the film, there's probably a strong correlation. It's no secret that the DC Extended Universe timeline is a bit of a mess. Despite starting strong with a clear vision for a more mature take on the franchise, everything after Justice League feels pretty disjointed. Not even Zack Snyder's long-anticipated director's cut of Justice League could fix the DCEU, leaving its fate up in the air until James Gunn and Peter Safran took over in 2023 and axed it for good. Following Man of Steel was Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice in 2016, which marked the first tease of Jason Momoa's Aquaman, and the following year brought Justice League. After that, the Atlantean got his own feature film in 2018, which is set about a year after Steppenwolf attacked Earth and the Justice League was formed. In the years following, the DCEU opted to highlight characters such as Shazam, Harley Quinn, and Peacemaker in a variety of projects leading into the 2020s. Taking place around the events of 2022's Black Adam and 2023's Shazam: Fury of the Gods, and possibly after The Flash, the Aquaman sequel continues Arthur's story as the DCEU closes shop. Where Blue Beetle fits into all this, we don't know, but we know that The Lost Kingdom marks the official end of the DCEU. After his brief found footage cameo in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, Jason Momoa made his first official appearance in 2017's Justice League. When Batman first meets him, Arthur is disillusioned and depressed, having been cast out by his own people.
Strong man as strong as alone. You ever heard that?
That's not a saying. That's the opposite of what the saying is.
Yeah.
It's only after meeting others like him and saving the world that he sees the value in being a hero and a king. A year later, Arthur is confronted by Mera and Vulko, who need his help to save Atlantis. Arthur's half-brother Orm is quickly running the kingdom into the ground and aims to declare war on the surface world. This leads to Arthur and Mera discovering the Trident of Atlan, finding his mother Atlanna, and reclaiming the throne after defeating Orm. Aquaman ends with Arthur now ruling as the king of Atlantis. Unfortunately, Aquaman doesn't appear much in the DCEU after that. He's mentioned here or there in movies like Shazam, but it wasn't until a cameo in the Season 1 finale of Peacemaker that Momoa returned to the role alongside Ezra Miller's Flash. Speaking of, Arthur drunkenly reunites with Barry Allen at the end of The Flash 2, which is fitting given how that movie wraps up. Before James Gunn and Peter Safran opted against saving the DCEU, the franchise was going in a very different direction. Following his turn in The Flash, Michael Keaton's Batman was set to appear in Aquaman 2 as well as in the now-scrapped Batgirl movie. But other plans were made. There was a time when Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was meant to premiere before the events of The Flash, and because of that, reshoots were made to replace Keaton's cameo with Ben Affleck's version of the character. Of course, fans were excited by the news, and many had hope that the DCEU was about to find its footing again, especially after Henry Cavill's way too brief return as Superman at the end of Black Adam. And then, Gunn and Safran came in. DC Films became DC Studios, and the DCEU was retconned in favor of the upcoming DC Universe, which aims to reboot the live-action franchise anew with a brand new Batman and Superman. Needless to say, Batman's cameo, be it Affleck or Keaton, is deep underwater. In the first Aquaman, we learn all about young Arthur's journey to becoming the man who eventually helps save the world and unite the kingdoms of Atlantis. Invaluable in his formation from a troubled youth to kingly material is Vulko, who watches out for Arthur throughout his whole life. Vulko makes his first official DCEU appearance in Aquaman, where he helps Arthur take the throne. Fans may be disappointed to learn that Willem Dafoe won't be returning as Vulko in Aquaman 2, though it's not because he's off playing the Green Goblin for Marvel again. According to director James Wan, Vulko's absence is due to a scheduling conflict. Wan revealed to Entertainment Weekly, part of the reason was because Dafoe's schedule did not work out for us, but what that allowed me to do was expand on Atlanta's role. Atlanta in this one ultimately becomes Arthur's advisor. Traditionally, Vulko serves as Aquaman's faithful advisor in the world of DC Comics, but here on the screen, it seems that Nicole Kidman's Atlanta will fill that role instead. It's fitting though, and allows Arthur and his mother the much-needed face time that they've been deprived of for so long. Still, it's sad we won't see Dafoe return. In the first Aquaman, it's revealed that there are 7 kingdoms of Atlantis. As its king, Arthur's quest to unite them is near the top of his to-do list, but we're a bit fuzzy on what the 7th kingdom might actually be.
Lost Nation had not yet vanished. Together, they were the greatest empire the world had ever seen.
Of course, there's Atlantis itself, and we soon learn of the others, which include Zebel, the Kingdom of the Fishermen, the Kingdom of the Brine, the Kingdom of the Deserters, and the Monstrous Trench. Though Atlantis, Zebel, the Trench, and the Deserters were all addressed in the DC continuity before the 2018 film, the comic book versions of the final 3 kingdoms weren't revealed until afterward in the Echoes of a Life Lived Well arc. The Brine is the first, being transplanted into the comics from the DCEU, and the Kingdom of the Rights and the Kingdom of the Sea Lights followed. The Rights are a bunch of underwater rodents, while the Sea Lights are strange bioluminescent humanoids. More than likely, the film will take a completely different approach. In the trailer for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Arthur and Mera are married and they have a son of their own. This begs the question if what we see in the Lost Kingdom is in line with what happens in the comics. Like anything that deals with Aquaman's comic book history, it's somewhat complicated, but there are clear answers. In 1965, Aquaman number 23 hit stores and Aquababy was born. That was the actual nickname for Arthur Curry Jr., the firstborn son of Aquaman and Mera. Unfortunately, the happy family didn't stay happy forever. In Adventure Comics number 452, Aquaman and Aqualad are forced into a battle to the death by Black Manta, who uses young Arthur Jr. as leverage. As expected, Aquaman defeats Manta, but at a terrible price. His son is ultimately killed by the supervillain, suffocating as a result of his captivity. This drove a wedge between Aquaman and Mera for decades. Eventually, though, they're able to rekindle and save their marriage. Aquaman has other children too. Aqualad, later known as Tempest, was considered Aquaman and Mera's adopted son, while AJ was their second child together years later. Arthur also had a child named Koryak with an Inuit woman at some point, and in the current DC Rebirth continuity, Aquaman and Mera only have a daughter named Andrina. Also appearing in the trailer for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is Black Manta, who swore vengeance on Aquaman back in the first movie after the superhero refused to save his dying father. Of course, the comic book version of their rivalry is much darker than that, with Aquaman purposely killing Manta's father in revenge following his own father's death. Additionally, recent comics have revealed that Manta is actually a long-lost descendant of the Kingdom of the Deserters. In the DCEU, however, Manta seems to be completely human, which puts him at a significant disadvantage when facing off against a superhero like Aquaman. Therefore, using Atlantean technology gifted to him by Ocean Master, Manta has sworn revenge on his adversary. But this time around, Black Manta's abilities have been upgraded through the use of the previously unseen Black Trident. This magical artifact originates from the time of the first King Atlan and seems to give the one who wields it incredible powers. Though it's unlikely a direct adaptation of either, this new Black Trident seems to borrow from 2 different weapons from Aquaman's comic book adventures, the Trident of Triton and the Dead King's Scepter. Triton's trident simply directed the Olympian's power, while the Dead King's Scepter gave the user control of the sea. From what we see of the Black Trident in the trailer, it may even unleash the dead. Despite being mentioned elsewhere in the Aquaman 2 trailer, Mera only appears once in the entire thing, with a brief glimpse at her as she attempts to break into some sort of underwater craft. While it might be easy to immediately blame her lack of screen time in the trailer and possibly the finished film as well on the recent and very public defamation trial between Amber Heard and her ex-husband Johnny Depp, that might not be the full story. Warner Brothers executive Walter Hamada said in 2022, Jason Momoa and Amber Heard didn't really have a lot of chemistry together. The reality is, it's not uncommon on movies for 2 leads to not have chemistry.
Your Majesty, there is no victory in defeating the ignorant. Your brother is clearly an imbecile.
Hamada added that a lot of their chemistry was developed off-set during post-production, making us wonder how much Mera will appear in The Lost Kingdom at all. But according to director James Wan, this was always the plan for the sequel. He explained to Entertainment Weekly, "I always pitched this to everyone from the get-go. The first Aquaman was Arthur and Mera's journey. The second movie was always going to be Arthur and Orm. So the first was a romance action-adventure movie. The second one is a bromance action-adventure movie." A modern master of horror, Wan rose to international acclaim when he co-created and directed the first Saw back in 2004. The film was so popular that a sequel was greenlit every year for the next 6 years until Saw 3D in 2010. But even then, Wan's time with the genre had only just begun. In 2010, Wan directed the first Insidious, which starred future Aquaman actor Patrick Wilson and spawned a plethora of sequels. A few years later, in 2013, Wan directed The Conjuring, which likewise sparked an entire cinematic universe. Since then, he's worked on several other horror movies, including 2021's *Malignant*. No wonder Wan used his trademark horror techniques during the trench sequence in the first Aquaman. So when the trailer for The Lost Kingdom shows an undead army controlled by Black Manta, it's no wonder Wan admitted to adding a certain horror flair back into the sequel. He said at 2020's DC's Fandom event, "Just like the first movie had a touch of my horror sensibility, in regards to the trench sequence, I would say there will be a little bit of that in this next one." Following the release of the first Aquaman in 2018, James Wan announced the development of a horror-infused spin-off centered around the trench. These sea-dwelling beasts first appeared in Jeff Johns' Aquaman run during the New 52 rebrand, and they've since risen to popularity after appearing in the first film. Producer Peter Safran told The Hollywood Reporter in 2019, "We always, even from the early concept art days, loved the idea of a trench movie." He revealed that the trench was meant to arrive in theaters before Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But only 2 years later, Walter Hamada shook things up with the DC brand, axing the project. While that was disappointing news in and of itself, fans became even more disillusioned after Wan commented further that October. While showcasing Black Manta's new look for the Lost Kingdom on Instagram, James Wan revealed something interesting. "I'll let you in on a secret. The canceled Trench spin-off movie was really going to be a secret Black Manta movie." No doubt, fans of the DC supervillain were floored by this news, which only proves that Wan had even bigger plans for the character and the greater Aquaverse. It's too bad the same couldn't be said about Warner Brothers. With the news that both Batman and Superman would be recast for the DC Universe reboot and reports that Gal Gadot likely isn't returning as Wonder Woman, it's understandable that fans would wonder about the fate of Jason Momoa's Aquaman. With DC's biggest hitters being tossed to the wayside in favor of new, updated models, chances are that the beloved King of Atlantis will be next. The Flash may have kept Ezra Miller's Barry Allen and Jason Momoa's Arthur Curry around for now, but things could quickly change. At least in Momoa's eyes, there won't be another Aquaman in the near future. Speaking with Variety in 2023, following the news of James Gunn and Peter Safran's intention to reboot the movie universe, he said, "I'll always be Aquaman. Ain't anyone coming in there and taking shit. There might be some other characters too. I can play other things too. I can be funny and savage and charming." With rumors swirling that Momoa is slated to appear as Lobo in some point in the near future, Peter Safran told IO9, "Jason always thought Aquaman was a trilogy in his own mind, but he also loves Lobo. He's been very clear about that too. He's never going to play two characters, but..." James Gunn then interrupted Safran saying, "We'll figure it out after Aquaman 2. For now, we'll just have to wait and see what will become of Momoa's Aquaman." One of the biggest questions on fans' minds concerning Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is whether it will get a follow-up of its own. More than likely, that will depend on how well the blockbuster does in theaters this Christmas, but that may not be the only competing factor. In September of 2023, James Wan told Screen Rant, "I'm aware of the impending DCU reboot. I mean, I use the analogy that I'm living in a house that's getting renovated. But the beauty about Aquaman is that we've always designed these two films to be within their own world." Given Wan's confidence, it's possible that future installments could go the way of Matt Reeves' out-of-continuity project, The Batman. It could be a viable way to keep Momoa around, but that doesn't mean the horror-turned-superhero director wants to go a third round in the ring. When asked by Entertainment Weekly if he'd be interested in doing a third Aquaman film, he said, "Oh buddy, I don't know. This film has taken up so much of my life, so much of my time. All I can think about now is taking a long break." One can hardly blame him. Production was stalled because of the COVID-19 pandemic. His Black Manta-centered spin-off, The Trench, was canceled, and the entire DCEU went up in flames. It's entirely possible that this could be the end of Aquaman's on-screen adventures, though we certainly hope for more. While James Wan might see his Aquaman movies as their own thing apart from the greater DCEU or DCU, it's clear that Warner Brothers and the folks at DC Studios don't see it the same way. When asked about the 4 DC-related movies of 2023, James Gunn explained how they'll fit into his larger plans, revealing to IO9, "I think that we've gotten lucky with the next 4 movies. We have Shazam, which leads into Flash, which resets everything, which then goes into Blue Beetle, which is totally disconnected, and that goes into Aquaman, which leads into Superman, our first big project." How exactly Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom connects to a movie like Superman Legacy is currently unknown. The Gunn-helmed reboot is meant to propel the Man of Steel into a new universe that also includes heroes such as Hawkgirl and the Guy Gardner Green Lantern. If there were to be another sequel, it's possible that it could fit into Gunn's newly minted DCU, especially if he wants this interpretation of Aquaman to be a building block for his larger universe. Of course, given how popular multiverses are nowadays, there's always that avenue, though it seems that Gunn wants to stay away from other worlds for now. Superman Legacy will follow a younger Superman in an even younger universe, which makes one wonder how an experienced Aquaman might fit in.